The paramedic's creed is to preserve life. Mine is a little more complicated. Tonight's lesson in preservation came courtesy of a Toyota Camry that had tried to merge with a concrete freeway overpass on the 101. I was elbows deep in the kind of human wreckage that scrubs off your skin but never quite leaves your soul, the air thick with the coppery tang of blood and the acrid smoke of burnt electronics. My hands, steady and sure from years of patching up Marines in the sand-swept hellholes of the world, worked on autopilot. Tourniquet, pressure dressing, IV line. The mundane, everyday horror of it all was the perfect camouflage. No one looks twice at a paramedic with tired eyes and a 1,000-yard stare. An hour later, back at the station, my phone buzzed with a notification that didn't come from any app on the Play Store. The icon was a stark, silver wolf's head silhouetted against a black moon. Lycan. It's our digital den, a decentralized platform running on a ghost blockchain, a place so deep in the web's guts that it makes the regular darknet look like a public library. No admins, no central server, just a peer-to-peer network of hunters and contracts. A new geotag had appeared, Vernon, the industrial wasteland south of downtown LA. Threat level, beta, lone target. The payout was a healthy chunk of Monero, untraceable and clean. I sent a one-word reply on our encrypted channel: work. The rendezvous was our mobile command post, a battered-looking Mercedes Sprinter van that was anything but standard. Inside, it was a temple of tactical technology, and its high priest was Leo Gallo, or as we knew him, Glitch, a former Air Force SIGINT analyst discharged for unauthorized curiosity. Glitch was a wraith in the machine, his fingers dancing across a bank of monitors. "Evening, Caleb," he mumbled, not looking up from a screen displaying a thermal map of the target area. "Hex is loading out. Doc's brewing up some fresh party favors." Marcus Cole, Hex, emerged from the back of the van, a mountain of quiet competence. A former Green Beret, he moved with an unnerving economy of motion. He didn't command with words so much as with sheer presence. He nodded at me, his eyes already running a mental checklist of my gear. "Vance, you're good to go?" "Always," I said, starting my own ritual. I stripped off my paramedic uniform and pulled on my own. Cry precision combat pants, a dark gray tactical shirt, and my plate carrier. I racked the charging handle on my BCM Recce 11, the 11.5-inch barrel making it perfect for close quarters work. The Surefire suppressor, the EOTech holographic sight, the PEQ-15 laser illuminator. It was an extension of my will. The final piece of the puzzle was Damian Wells, Doc. He was waiting by the van's workbench, a pair of forceps in hand, holding up a single cartridge. A former DARPA chemical engineer, Doc was obsessed, not with killing, but with the science of it. "The Series 4, he said, his voice buzzing with academic excitement. "Sintered tungsten silver composite. I tweaked the powder grain for better fragmentation in dense, non-biological tissue. It should be exquisitely effective." I took the offered magazines, the rounds feeling heavy and dense, and slotted them into my mag pouches. Exquisite. Let's go. Hex and I were the assault element. Glitch was our eye in the sky, and Doc was mission support. In the van, we reviewed the plan. Glitch had a DJI Matris 30T drone airborne, its thermal camera feeding us a live picture of the industrial park. "Got a heat signature," Glitch's voice crackled in my bone conduction headset. "Big, moving fast. Alleyway between the chemical plant and the abandoned meatpacking facility. He's on the prowl." The Sprinter rolled to a stop a quarter-mile out. Hex and I disembarked into the cold, damp air, the stink of chemicals and decay hanging heavy. We moved in a two-man wedge, rifles up, our sectors of fire overlapping. The world became a narrow tunnel of green and white through my night vision goggles. "He's cornered," Glitch whispered in our ears. "He knows we're here. He's heading into the meat packer." We stacked up on the rusted metal door of the warehouse. Hex gave me a hand signal. 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. He kicked the door open, and we flowed inside. The place was a cavern of shadows and dangling chains. The drone couldn't see in here. We were on our own. A flicker of movement in the far corner. A large silhouette. "Target acquired." Hex's voice was flat, calm. He raised his rifle. The suppressed shot was a dull cough, a sound swallowed by the cavernous space. A scream of inhuman rage answered. It wasn't a man's scream. It was the sound of sinew stretching and bones breaking. The silhouette swelled, rising from a crouch to a height of nearly 8 feet. Fur sprouted from its skin in thick, greasy tufts. The lycanthrope. It charged. A blur of claws and teeth. Hex put another round into its leg, staggering it. It stumbled, and that's when my training took over. I saw the target area, the center of mass. I squeezed the trigger twice. Thump, thump. The tungsten silver rounds hit home. The beast shuddered, a look of profound shock on its half-man, half-wolf face. It took 2 steps, then collapsed in a heap. Silence. The only sound was the drip of water from the ceiling and the ragged hiss of my own breathing. Hex moved in, weapon still trained on the body. Clear. The post-fight procedure was as ingrained as the fight itself. I took out a secure device, snapped a photo of the kill with a unique time-stamped digital token for the Lycan app. Proof of delivery. While I did that, Hex collected a tissue sample with a sterile kit for Doc. Then, we were gone, melting back into the night as quickly as we had appeared. Back in the van, the atmosphere was relaxed, professional. Glitch was already confirming the Monero deposit into our anonymous wallet. Doc was practically vibrating with excitement as Hex handed him the sample vial. "Fascinating," Doc murmured, already prepping a slide. "Note the accelerated cellular degradation from the silver nitrate composite. The cascade failure is almost instantaneous." We ran through the AIR, the after-action review. My entry was a half-second slow. Hex's first shot could have been a few inches higher. We were always trying to perfect the art of killing monsters. I noticed a thin, red scratch on the back of Hex's hand, just below his glove. He'd gotten it when the beast stumbled. "Let me see that," I said, pulling out a sanitizing wipe from my med kit. "It's nothing," he grunted. "Let me see." I cleaned the shallow cut and applied a small bandage. As I worked, a cold thought slithered into my mind. This was getting easy. Too easy. The money, the routine, the clean execution, it was lulling us into a dangerous rhythm. And I had a gut feeling. The kind that kept Marines alive in Fallujah, that sooner or later, that rhythm was going to break. 2 days of quiet followed. 2 days of me running calls in the ambulance, dealing with overdoses and heart attacks, the whole time feeling the hum of the other life beneath my skin. Then, on the 3rd night, the Lycan app lit up with something different. The geotag wasn't some industrial slum or forgotten stretch of desert. It was Beverly Hills. The payout was listed in a string of zeros that I had to count twice. The Monero equivalent of $500,000, 10 times our standard fee. The threat level was marked Alpha Class, a designation we'd only ever seen in theoretical discussions, but it was paired with a contradictory note. Single target. The client's handle was simply Prometheus. Hex called the meeting at our headquarters, which was the back half of Doc's material science workshop in a nondescript Sun Valley industrial park. The air smelled of ozone, gun oil, and strange chemicals. Glitch had the contract details projected onto a large wall-mounted screen. "Okay, stray dogs, listen up," Hex began, his voice tight. "This is the golden ticket." Glitch took over, pacing in front of the screen. "The target is located at a private estate. The hit has to happen tonight during a high society gala. The client, Prometheus, has provided a shocking amount of intel. Full architectural blueprints, security patrol schedules, even backdoor codes for some of the digital systems." He paused, looking at us. "That's red flag number 1. It's too much. It's a gift-wrapped kill box." I felt that same cold knot from the other night tighten in my stomach. "This smells like a trap, Hex. They're baiting us with the money and the intel." Hex stared at the blueprints, his jaw set. The money was a factor, but I knew what really hooked him: the challenge. This wasn't a back alley beast. This was an operation. "Maybe," he conceded. "Or maybe it's a client who knows what they want and is willing to pay for the best. An alpha class. That's a once-in-a-lifetime contract." Doc, who had been quietly examining the data, pushed his glasses up his nose. His eyes were gleaming. An alpha. "Marcus, do you realize the physiological data we could extract? The potency of the regenerative capabilities? This wouldn't just be a kill, it would be a scientific breakthrough. The samples alone would be priceless." Glitch scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Trap or not, their tech is irrelevant. If they have a digital defense, I'll own it in 5 minutes. If it's a physical trap, well, that's your department." The room fell silent. All eyes were on Hex. I could see the internal battle, the strategist weighing the immense risk against the unprecedented reward and the sheer audacity of the mission. He looked from the screen to me, then to Doc, then to Glitch. "We take it," he said finally. The words hung in the air, heavy as lead. "But we go in smart. Glitch, I want you to live inside their network for the next 24 hours. I want to know what brand of toilet paper the host uses. Caleb and I will plan the infill. Doc, I want something special for this one." The next day was a blur of intense preparation. Glitch, fueled by a river of energy drinks, went to work. He didn't just use the intel provided. He treated it as a potential lie. He cross-referenced the blueprints with city planning archives, hacked the social media of every confirmed guest on the party list, and wormed his way into the traffic camera network for a 2-mile radius around the estate. The owner was a reclusive media mogul, famous for his decadent and bizarre parties. Our infiltration plan became a multi-stage dance. Phase 1. Glitch and Doc would pose as a high-end wine delivery service using a rented van. Their cargo, however, wouldn't be cases of Chateau Margaux, but our primary gear, concealed in custom-built, lead-lined crates to defeat any scanners. They'd drop it in a pre-designated service room. Phase 2. Under the cover of darkness, Hex and I would go over the wall, exploiting a blind spot Glitch had found in the perimeter security. Doc, meanwhile, was in his element. He unveiled his masterpiece, the Thermite S round. "Standard silver tungsten core for penetration," he explained, holding one up to the light. "But I've added a microcapsule of potassium permanganate suspended in a glycerin-based gel. On impact, the capsule ruptures. The resulting exothermic reaction will generate an internal temperature of over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not just a bullet, it's a localized thermite lance. We'd be going in light and fast. Our plate carriers, Our rifles and the Thermite S rounds. Nothing else. The night of the operation arrived with a thick marine layer that blanketed the city, a gift from nature. We gathered by the Sprinter for the final check. The air was electric with tension. Hex looked each of us in the eye. "Check your gear, check your mags, check your head," he said, his voice a low growl. No mistakes. We loaded up and rolled out, the van's engine a quiet purr. I chambered a Thermite S round, the click of the bolt echoing in the silent cabin. The cold knot in my stomach was now a block of ice. We were walking into the mouth of the beast, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Prometheus wasn't just paying us to hunt. He was feeding us to his monster. The manicured streets of Beverly Hills were unnervingly quiet, a world away from the gritty industrial zones we usually haunted. We moved along the southern perimeter of the estate, a 10-foot-high wall of ivy-draped stone. We were shadows in black tactical gear, the only sound the soft crunch of our boots on the gravel shoulder. "Patrol 1 is approaching your sector, 200 feet out." Glitch's voice was a calm whisper in my ear, transmitted from the Sprinter parked half a mile away. "Go static. 3, 2, 1. He's past the corner. You're clear. Move." We slipped between a pair of cypress trees, reaching the blind spot Glitch had identified, a 20-foot section of wall between two overlapping camera fields. Hex pulled a pair of compact hydraulic cutters from his pack. There was no loud snap, just a dull metallic groan as the tool bit through the black iron bars of a service gate set into the wall. We squeezed through the gap and were in. The air inside was different. The city's exhaust fumes were replaced by the cloying sweetness of night-blooming jasmine and the faint, effervescent scent of champagne. Muffled laughter and the low thrum of a string quartet drifted from the main house, a sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion lit up like a cruise ship. It felt like we'd stepped into another dimension. We moved from the shadow of one sculpted hedge to the next, our rifles held at a low ready. Our target was the pool house, a smaller structure set away from the main building. This was where Glitch and Doc had made their delivery earlier. The door was unlocked as planned. Inside, sitting innocuously among pool supplies and neatly folded towels, were our two hard cases. The transformation was swift and silent. We shrugged on our plate carriers and checked our rigs. I double-checked my personal med pouch, cat tourniquets, hemostatic gauze, a syringe of morphine, another of epinephrine, a silent prayer to whatever gods watch over medics that I wouldn't need them. "Eye in the Sky is going live," Glitch announced. Hex pulled out his tactical tablet. On the screen, a new video feed flickered to life. Glitch was deploying a Black Hornet 3, a palm-sized drone that was virtually silent. We watched as the tiny aircraft zipped across the manicured lawn and slipped through a partially open window on the mansion's second floor. The view was surreal. We were seeing a lavish party from a fly's eye perspective. Men in $1,000 tuxedos and women in glittering gowns mingled, holding flutes of champagne. They were laughing, oblivious, bathed in the warm glow of chandeliers. "Prometheus provided biometrics," Glitch said. "Running facial recognition against the drone feed now. Looking for our boy." A few seconds of silence. "Got him. Second floor, east wing, study, male, Asian, approximately 50 years old, wearing a dark blue suit. And Caleb, you'll like this. Thermal is showing a core body temperature too, maybe 3 degrees higher than everyone else in the room. It's him." Our path was clear. Glitch had already mapped it. Kitchen service entrance on the north side. I've overridden the magnetic lock. It'll stay open for the next 60 seconds. Go. We moved. We slipped through a garden, past a marble fountain, and found the service door. Inside, the chaos of a high-end catering operation was our cover. Dozens of staff in crisp white uniforms rushed about with trays of food and dirty glasses. We were just two more dark shapes in a river of motion. No one gave us a second look. We found the service staircase and ascended, the sounds of the party growing louder. The second floor was quieter, carpeted hallways branching off from the main landing. We found the corridor to the east wing. It was empty. The study door was at the far end, slightly ajar. A sliver of warm light spilled onto the Persian runner. We took up positions on either side of the doorway, pressing ourselves flat against the wall. Hex gave the hand signals. "You take left side of the room. I take right. On my mark." I nodded, my heart a steady, trained drum against my ribs. I could feel the adrenaline beginning to leak into my system, sharpening my senses, slowing down time. I heard the muffled sound of a man's voice from inside the room, speaking calmly. Hex held up his hand, ready to give the signal to breach. The trap was set. The question was, for who? Hex unclipped a small device from his vest, a fiber optic scope no thicker than a wire. He carefully threaded the lens through the gap between the door and the frame. The image appeared on his wrist-mounted display. He watched for a moment, then retracted it. PID. He whispered into his throat mic, the military acronym for positive identification. One target, seated at a desk back to us, on the phone, seems clueless. He looked at me, his eyes dark under the brim of his helmet. He raised 3 fingers. They dropped one by one. 3, 2, 1. The breach was a symphony of controlled violence. Hex swung the door open and went in low and fast. I followed a half-step behind, my rifle sweeping the right side of the opulent room. Bookshelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A fire crackled in a marble fireplace. The man at the mahogany desk dropped his phone and spun around in his leather chair. He wasn't old. He was powerful, his bespoke suit fitting his broad shoulders perfectly, and the look in his eyes wasn't surprise. It wasn't even fear. It was a flash of pure, undiluted fury, a look of recognition. He knew we were coming. "Contact!" Hex yelled, the word a percussive blast in the quiet room. The man didn't run. He didn't surrender. He let out a low, guttural snarl as he rose from the chair and his body began to change. Hex fired. The suppressed BCM coughed once. The Thermite S round struck the target in the right shoulder. A sickening hiss erupted, and a plume of greasy white smoke poured from the wound as the man's flesh was flash-cooked from the inside out. He roared in pain, a sound that shook the very air, but he did not fall. The transformation accelerated. It was nothing like the slow, agonizing process we were used to. This was explosive. We heard the wet snap of bones breaking and reforming at impossible speeds. His tailored suit ripped as his torso swelled with muscle. His skin split, revealing a mat of thick black fur beneath. His face elongated into a monstrous snout, teeth lengthening into yellowed fangs. In seconds, the distinguished man in the suit was gone, replaced by a 9-foot-tall creature of nightmare, a perfect predator, an alpha. It threw its head back and unleashed a howl. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was a signal, a summons, and the house answered. From downstairs, from the hallways, from every corner of the sprawling mansion, a chorus of howls rose to meet the Alpha's call. Dozens of them. Glitch's voice screamed in our headsets, laced with a terror I had never heard from him before. Hex, God, no. The thermal map. It's lit up like a Christmas tree. They're everywhere. The guests, the staff, all of them. On my own wrist display, the building schematic was suddenly flooded with red dots. dozens of them swarming, converging on our position. The sounds from the hallway shifted from muffled panic to the thunder of heavy bodies and the scrape of claws on hardwood floors. The doors down the corridor began to slam open. Prometheus hadn't just laid a trap. He'd invited us to a feast. And we were the main course. "Move! Back to the stairs now!" Hex's voice cut through the chaos, a blade of pure command. There was no time for a tactical assessment. There was only retreat. I backed out of the study, rifle pressed to my shoulder, as Hex laid down a burst of suppressive fire. The Alpha, shrugging off its grievous wound, swiped a massive clawed hand, splintering the heavy mahogany desk into kindling. As I cleared the doorway, I pulled a flashbang from my vest, yanked the pin, and tossed it into the room. The world went white and silent for a heartbeat. The concussive whump of the detonation slammed against my back, giving us the precious seconds we needed. We sprinted down the corridor and were met with a vision from hell. 2 guests, or what was left of them, were charging us. Their tuxedos were in tatters, hanging off bodies that were still shifting, caught mid-transformation. They were grotesque parodies of man and beast, their faces contorted in snarling agony. Hex and I opened fire, a coordinated rhythm of single precise shots. Our Thermite S rounds struck home, but the creatures were driven by a primal frenzy that ignored the catastrophic damage. They just kept coming. "Headshots or center mass only?" Hex yelled over the gunfire. We reached the grand staircase, a sweeping structure of marble and brass. But our escape route was cut off. A tide of monsters was surging up from the first floor, at least 5 or 6 of them, their eyes glowing with feral hunger. They moved with a terrifying, unnatural speed. "Glitch, status on exits," Hex demanded as we fell back. "Negative. All ground floor exits are sealed. Steel shutters just dropped on the windows. The whole damn house is on lockdown." Glitch's voice was strained. "They've locked us in a cage with them." There was only one way to go. "Up," Hex commanded. "Attic, we need a defensible choke point." We turned and ran, pounding down the opposite hallway, the pack howling at our heels. One of the creatures, faster than the rest, leapt from the wall, a blur of black fur and claws. It slammed into my back, its momentum sending me sprawling. Before it could sink its teeth into my neck, Hex spun around, his rifle barking a 3-round burst that pulped the monster's skull. I scrambled to my feet, but not before another beast's raking claws tore through the fabric of my tactical pants and deep into the muscle of my left thigh. A searing, white-hot pain shot up my leg. "I'm hit! Leg!" I shouted, adrenaline and training overriding the agony. We found it at the end of the hall, a narrow, steep staircase leading up to a trap door. The attic. We scrambled up, Hex hauling me the last few feet. He slammed the heavy wooden door shut and threw the bolt just as the first of the pack slammed against it from below. The wood groaned, splintering under the impact. We were plunged into dusty darkness, pierced only by the beams of our weapon-mounted lights. Grunting with effort, we started dragging old trunks and discarded furniture, barricading the trapdoor. Below us, the sound of furious snarling and the splintering of wood was a constant, terrifying drumbeat. For a moment, there was a lull, a chance to breathe. Pain flared in my leg, hot and insistent. I gritted my teeth, fumbled for my medkit, and slapped a cat tourniquet high on my thigh, cranking it until the bleeding slowed. Hex was already doing an ammo check, his face grim in the dancing light. 2 mags of silver left, he said, his voice dangerously low. I checked my own pouches, my fingers feeling for the cold, heavy weight of the magazines. 1.5. The math was simple, and it was terrifying. We were trapped in a locked house with an army of monsters. One of us was wounded, and we were just a few dozen rounds away from being completely defenseless. The pain in my leg was a roaring fire, but I forced it to the back of my mind. There was work to do. While Hex kept his rifle trained on the groaning trapdoor, I went to work on myself. My movements were quick, clinical. I cut away the torn fabric of my pants, exposing the deep, ragged gouges. The claws had shredded the muscle. I packed the worst of it with quick-clot combat gauze, the hemostatic agent burning like a fresh hell, then wrapped it tight with a pressure dressing. It was ugly, but it would hold. For now. "Glitch, Doc, talk to me," Hex barked into his comms. "Their comms protocol is a closed loop, proprietary. I can't break it." Glitch sounded frantic. "It's like nothing I've ever seen. Whoever their tech guy is, he's a ghost or a genius." Doc's voice, calmer and more analytical, cut in. "Ballistics advice. Aim for the joints. Knees, elbows. You can't kill them all, so cripple them. The silver compound disrupts cellular regeneration, but it's not instantaneous. Rob them of their mobility." A thunderous crack from below. The trapdoor's hinges tore loose. A massive black-furred arm, tipped with yellowed claws, punched through the splintered wood. Hex didn't hesitate. He fired a single, careful shot. The round hit the creature's elbow. There was a wet crunch, and the arm recoiled with a howl of agony. But another one immediately took its place. The attic became our Alamo. The narrow opening was a fatal funnel, a choke point that forced them to come at us one at a time. It was our only advantage. We fell into the rhythm of combat, a deadly dance we'd perfected over years of training. Hex would fire, dropping the first creature that tried to climb through. As he acquired his next target, I would fire, covering him. The floor around us became a carpet of gleaming brass casings. The air grew thick with the smell of cordite and dust. One monster, then another, then a third. They fell back down the stairs, dead or dying, but the supply seemed endless. "Last mag of silver," I yelled, slamming it home. The bolt slid forward with a terrifying finality. "Same!" Hex grunted, firing another 2-round burst. Panic, cold and sharp, tried to claw its way up my throat. I swallowed it down. Our specialized ammunition, the only thing truly effective against these things, was almost gone. Standard rounds would be like throwing pebbles at them. A frantic thought, a desperate Hail Mary from Doc, crackled in my ear. "Caleb, your med kit, the epinephrine. Mix it with the colloidal silver from your field suture kit. Direct injection. It's a long shot, but a massive systemic shock combined with a direct application of silver to the brain or optic nerve could work. It's insane, but it's all I've got." It was a mad scientist's gamble. While Hex held the line, firing his last precious rounds with chilling precision, I worked frantically. I broke open my suture kit, drawing the vial of sterile silver solution into a syringe, then adding a full dose of epinephrine. I prepared 2, my hands shaking slightly. It wasn't a bullet, but it was a weapon. Hex, meanwhile, was scanning the attic, his tactical mind searching for any way out. His light beam fell on a large grate in the far wall, a ventilation shaft. "New plan," he yelled over the din. "We have to break out of this box. The objective is the Alpha. The first one, in the study. We take out the head, the body might fall. We have to go back down into that hell." There was no room for debate. It was a suicide run, but staying put was a slower, more certain death. Hex pulled the pin on our last flashbang. "On my go," he yelled. He tossed it down the ruined stairwell. The resulting blast was followed by screams of disoriented rage. "Go!" We plunged back into the maelstrom. I landed hard on my wounded leg and a wave of nausea and black spots washed over me. Hex grabbed my arm, hauling me forward. "Stay with me, Caleb." The second floor was a charnel house. The battle was still raging, but it was different now. The pack, leaderless for the moment, was in a frenzy. We saw two of the beasts tearing at each other in a side room, a dominant struggle already beginning. The air was thick with the smell of blood and scorched fur. "Glitch, we need the Alpha's location, last known," Hex demanded. "My drone is toast, but its last transmission showed him moving toward the library, first floor." Glitch's voice was a lifeline. "He's wounded, but he's still moving." We fought our way to the grand staircase, now slick with blood. We descended into the main hall, a battlefield of overturned furniture and shattered crystal. The library doors, two massive oak panels, were ajar. Hex pushed me behind a large marble column. He was breathing hard, his face a mask of grim determination. He had a new, desperate plan. "I'm the bait," he said, his voice low and urgent. He ejected his nearly empty magazine of silver rounds and slammed in a mag of standard ball ammunition. It wouldn't kill the Alpha, but it would make a lot of noise and get its attention. "You get up to that gallery," he pointed to the library's second-floor balcony. "Get a clear line of sight. When he exposes himself, you take the shot. Don't you miss, Caleb. You've got one magazine. Make it count." Before I could argue, he was gone. He kicked open the library doors and disappeared inside, his rifle barking. The loud, unsuppressed cracks of the standard rounds echoed through the mansion. I scrambled up a service ladder tucked away in an alcove, my legs screaming in protest. I crawled onto the wrought iron gallery, peering through the railing. Below, the duel had begun. The Alpha, a 9-foot behemoth of muscle and rage, was a whirlwind of destruction. Hex was a blur of motion, using bookshelves and a heavy reading table as cover, dodging, weaving, firing his pistol to draw the beast's attention. It was a dance with death, and Hex was leading. My hands were slick with sweat. I rested my BCM on the railing to steady it, the EOTech's reticle wavering over the chaos below. I needed a clean shot. Just one moment. Hex rolled behind a leather sofa, and the Alpha, roaring in frustration, leaped onto it, shredding the expensive upholstery. For a single critical second, the creature stood exposed, its massive chest puffed out as it howled in triumph. That was my moment. Breathe in. Hold. Squeeze. My rifle coughed 3 times, the sound barely audible over the Alpha's roar. 3 Thermite S rounds, my last 3, stitched a tight pattern across the monster's sternum. The Alpha froze. The triumphant howl died in its throat, replaced by a choked gurgle. The smoke of the internal thermite reaction poured from the wounds in its chest. It slowly turned its massive head, its intelligent, hate-filled eyes looking up and locking directly onto mine. The fury was gone, replaced by a flicker of something that looked like surprise. Then the light faded, and it crashed to the floor with a ground-shaking thud. In the instant the Alpha died, the psychic pressure that filled the house vanished. The howls and snarls faltered, replaced by yelps of confusion and fear. The pack was broken. Hex's gamble had paid off. A window of chaos had opened. "To the cellar, blueprints showed a sewer access tunnel." Hex's voice, ragged and hoarse, cut through the sudden lull. He sprinted from the library, grabbing my arm and pulling me to my feet. We crashed through the remnants of the pack. They were a disorganized mob now, some already turning on each other, others slinking back into the shadows, their feral confidence shattered. We were no longer the primary threat. Their own bloody hierarchy was reasserting itself. We found the cellar door under the main staircase and kicked it open. descending into a cavernous, wine-scented darkness. Against the far wall, just as the blueprints had shown, was a heavy, cast-iron manhole cover set into the concrete floor. It took both our remaining strength to pry it open. A wave of stomach-turning stench rolled over us, the foul breath of the city's underbelly. Below us was a dark, dripping tunnel. We could hear the sounds of the renewed slaughter starting up again on the floors above. Without a second thought, we dropped into the filth. The world became a tunnel of darkness and foul-smelling water. We waded through the knee-deep sludge, the only light from our failing weapon lights. The pain in my leg was a constant throbbing agony, and with every step I felt my strength seeping away. Glitch's voice in my ear, guiding us with a digital map of the sewer system, was the only thing keeping us moving forward. 200 more feet. Take the next junction to the right. You're almost there. After what felt like an eternity, we saw it. A faint circle of light from a maintenance ladder above. Our exfiltration point. A service access hatch beneath the roaring concrete expanse of the 405 freeway. Glitch and Doc were there. The Sprinter van parked in the deep shadows of the overpass, its engine rumbling. They tore open the side door as we emerged from the manhole, blinking in the harsh sodium lights. Doc and Hex half-carried, half-dragged me into the van. The moment I was inside, the professional facade I'd maintained shattered, and I collapsed onto the floor. Doc was on me in an instant, his hands all business. He cut away the makeshift dressing, cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency, and started an IV line in my arm, pumping me full of saline and broad-spectrum antibiotics. "Those claws were caked in God knows what," Doc said grimly, his focus absolute. "The lycanthropy isn't the risk here. It's sepsis, good old-fashioned human infection." As Doc worked, a quiet chime came from Glitch's secure laptop. "Well, I'll be damned," Glitch muttered, staring at his screen. "The rest of the payment just came through. Prometheus is paying us for surviving his trap." And then, another notification, not a crypto transfer, a simple text-based message on the same encrypted channel. The sender ID was Prometheus. The message was short. "You actually survived. I underestimated you, but it doesn't matter, I'm watching. And a bill always comes due." The air in the van went cold. We all froze, staring at the screen. This wasn't a client. This wasn't a contract gone wrong. We had been pawns in an elaborate personal execution attempt. And the person who set it up, this ghost named Prometheus, knew who we were. He knew our team. He was still out there, and he was watching us. The exhaustion and pain were washed away by a sudden cold tide of fury. We had been played, humiliated, and nearly killed. Hex, who had been silently watching Doc stitch up my leg, looked at the message on Glitch's screen. His knuckles were white where he gripped his rifle. He uttered a single word, a command that was also a promise. Find him. This wasn't about a contract anymore. It wasn't about Monero or Alpha-class targets. This was about survival. An enemy who knew us, who could manipulate us this skillfully, was a threat that couldn't be left breathing. We had to hunt the hunter. Glitch spun his chair around, his eyes burning with a new fire. "He's good," he said, his fingers already flying across his keyboard. He routed his connection through a cascading series of proxies and anonymizing networks across 3 continents. Tracing this is like trying to unbake a cake. But he made one mistake. "What mistake?" I asked, gritting my teeth as Doc tightened a suture. "He talked to us," Glitch said with a grim smile. "Every packet of data, every keystroke leaves a trace, a ghost. I just have to find it." The next 72 hours were a blur. The Sprinter van became our war room, parked in a series of anonymous industrial lots. We lived on stale coffee, adrenaline, and pure distilled anger. While I recovered, my leg elevated on a medical case, the others worked. Doc wasn't just analyzing the Alpha's tissue samples. He was analyzing its tactics, building a psychological and biological profile of our unknown enemy. Hex was stripped to a t-shirt, cleaning weapons and war-gaming scenarios on a whiteboard, planning for every possible contingency when we finally found our ghost. Glitch called his method digital archaeology. He didn't try to brute force the encryption. Instead, he hunted for echoes. He analyzed the microscopic time delays, the latency, between the network nodes Prometheus had used, looking for the one with the faintest signal, the one closest to the source. He dug through archives, pulling up server logs from a decade ago, searching for configuration errors, forgotten backdoors, anything the architect of our misery might have used and discarded. He's using layers like an onion, Glitch explained, pointing to a complex diagram on his screen. Most of these are modern, secure. But to build a chain this complex, you sometimes have to use older, weaker links. Rusted out parts of the internet nobody's patched in years. I'm looking for the rust. On the third day, he found it. "Gotcha, you son of a bitch," he whispered. He sat bolt upright, his eyes wide. "One of the primary nodes in his proxy chain, it's a private server. Registered to an IT solutions company that went bankrupt in 2015. The hardware should have been wiped and sold for scrap years ago." "But it wasn't?" Hex asked, stepping closer. "No. Someone kept paying the hosting fees. Anonymously through a series of shell accounts funded by a stolen credit card," Glitch said, his typing becoming a frantic blur. He traced the card not to its owner but to the point of sale where it was used to buy a disposable crypto wallet. And from that wallet, he found another transaction, a recurring monthly payment. "It's not a corporation," Glitch said, leaning back, a look of disbelief on his face. "It's not a rival mercenary group. It's an internet service provider bill." He pulled up the account information. The chain of digital breadcrumbs, which had started in a Beverly Hills mansion and circled the globe, ended at a single physical address, a quiet suburban house in Pasadena. We had him. The preparation was swift and silent. We expected a fortress. We expected a hardened operator, another hunter, a technological wizard protected by automated defenses. We loaded up with the last of Doc's silver rounds, geared up for a hard breach, and rolled out under the cover of a moonless night, ready to face the devil who had almost sent us to our graves. We moved on the Pasadena house like ghosts. It was a simple two-story craftsman on a street lined with oak trees, the picture of suburban tranquility. It was the last place on Earth you'd expect to find a master manipulator and killer. The four of us moved in perfect sync, a dark tide flowing over the manicured lawn. Glitch, working from the van, found the house's Wi-Fi network. It was protected by a laughably simple password. Within seconds, he had disabled the home's security system and confirmed there were no other digital tripwires. Hex and I stacked on the front door. Doc and Glitch covered the sides of the house. On Hex's silent hand signal, I used a pry bar to pop the lock with a single muffled crack. We swung the door open and flowed inside. The house was normal and silent. The living room was modestly furnished, a little worn. A television was paused on a cartoon. There were no signs of a struggle, no hidden defenses, nothing supernatural. We cleared the first floor room by room, kitchen, dining room, den. Nothing. Just the eerie quiet of a sleeping home. We ascended the stairs. our boots silent on the carpeted steps. 3 doors. 2 were bedrooms, both empty, neatly made. The last door was slightly ajar. It looked like a child's room. We breached, and we froze. The room was dominated by a massive wraparound computer desk. 3 glowing monitors cast a blue light on the figure sitting in a gaming chair. It wasn't a hardened mercenary. It wasn't a monster, it was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, dressed in dinosaur print pajamas. He had a pair of expensive headphones over his ears and was so focused on the screen that he didn't even notice us at first. On the monitors were lines of code I didn't understand, but I recognized the stark wolf's head logo of the Lycan app. He was inside the source code. He must have sensed us. He slowly took off his headphones and swiveled in his chair. He looked at us, 4 heavily armed men in full tactical gear filling his doorway, with calm, unnervingly intelligent eyes. There was no fear. "You're too late," he said, his voice quiet and steady. A child's voice with an adult's chilling finality. "I've already transferred the assets and initiated the server scrub. The Lycan network will be erased in an hour." My eyes scanned the room, trying to make sense of it all. They landed on a corkboard on the wall. It was covered in academic awards from school. First place in the State Math Olympiad, a certificate for excellence in computer science. And in the very center, pinned with a single thumbtack, was a photograph. It was the boy, smiling, his arms wrapped around the neck of a man I recognized instantly. It was the lone werewolf we had hunted in the Vernon Industrial Park 2 months ago. Our routine night catch. The one that had made me feel like our job was getting too easy. Everything crashed into place. The name Prometheus, the titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind. The genius-level hacking. The desire for revenge. The intricate, perfect trap designed to use our own skills against us. This child, this orphaned prodigy, had weaponized his grief and intellect to hunt the men who had killed his father. He'd hired us with our own money, from the accounts he'd likely been managing for his father all along, and sent us to our deaths. Hex stared at the boy, then at the photo, and the pieces connected behind his eyes. He looked at the child who had outmaneuvered him, outthought him, and almost destroyed him. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered the barrel of his BCM Recce 11 until it pointed at the floor. We backed out of the room without a word, leaving the boy sitting in the glow of his monitors. We walked out of the quiet house, got in our van, and drove away into the Los Angeles night. We couldn't kill a child. But as the suburban streets of Pasadena disappeared behind us, a terrifying realization settled over me. We hadn't ended a threat. We had left one to fester. We had left a boy genius, our own personal Prometheus, alive. A boy who knew our faces, our methods, our names. A boy who would grow up, his intellect sharpened by a singular burning purpose, to finish the job he started. Our war with the monsters wasn't over. It had just become terrifyingly personal.